Welcome to Evil Live, the live media commentary show that answers the question, how do you advocate for the devil? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we're reviewing Barbarian. Wow! Now, this is going to be a spoiler review, and I know you don't want to be spoiled for this film. It's just, if I don't do a spoiler review now, I'm not going to come back and do one later. So I'm going to give you my regular review up front, and then I'll get into spoilers, and I'll make sure to tell you when that is. However, if you're happening to watch this live and you're jumping in, I have spoiler in the title. So if you don't expect to be spoiled, you're an idiot and can't read. So this is going to be spoiler filled. I want to make sure it's clear because you should see this yourself before you see any spoiler review. It is that good. Do yourself a favor and check this film out. Okay. So this is a horror film written and directed by Zach Cregger. Never heard of him before. I am not familiar with him, but oh my gosh, is he amazing. And the first thing that you should pick out about this film is the music. So it was by Anna Drubich? Yeah, we'll say that. The cinematographer is pretty good too. That was by Zach Cooperstein. But that music, you are feeling the music the entire time in this film, and it is great. It gives you those wonderful cues about when something bad is going to happen, but it also has this wonderful sort of ambient texture to the experience. Right when the very beginning of the film, it's already hitting you really hard. So this is what's great. You know, The Evil Dead, the film, the newest version of it, that was sort of a remake of sorts, but it was just different characters in the original Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness crew. They did a wonderful job with music as well as far as horror is concerned. The Shining, Doctor Sleep. I mean, you know, horror needs a great soundtrack to accompany it, and this really knocked it out of the park. And so you have to call out the people when they do great things. So this premiered originally at San Diego Comic-Con July 22, 2022, but it was originally going to be released to the public at the end of August on the 31st. That was changed until last night. So I saw it last night with my wife, and it was a few people in the theater. It wasn't a ton. This is an amazing film that just subverts expectations in the most brilliant ways possible, because the trailers don't tell you anything about the actual story. They set up the story for you, but it doesn't spoil anything, which is wonderful. That usually trailers give you everything, and it's just a sort of modern way of doing trailers, which sucks. It's wonderful when the trailer doesn't spoil the story and you go in as a viewer just liking the vibe or tone of the trailer, and then you get to experience the film in its full majesty. The cast on this is amazing. Georgina Campbell as Tess Marshall, Bill Skarsgård as Keith Toshko, Justin Long is in this, who I always love from Drag Me to Hell and some of the other, like Tusk. He's great, but he is AJ Gilbride in this. Matthew Patrick Davis is a character called... I'll leave those last two because those are spoilers. So I'll leave those until I get to the spoiler section of this, but just to give you a review of this beforehand. The log line is, a woman staying at an Airbnb discovers that the house she's rented is not what it seems. So Zach Cregger originally offered the role of AJ to Zac Efron, who I think is a total douche, but Efron ended up turning it down, causing Cregger to rethink the role and offer it to Justin Long, who then accepted it. And I'm glad he did because he was brilliant in it. The script started out as a scene between a man and a woman, with the man unknowingly getting in as many red flags as possible to the woman's experience. And this is not spoiler, but you know, when Tess goes up to her Airbnb because she came into Detroit in order to do get a new gig working with a director about a documentary about sort of how the music industry has moved into these sort of destroyed Detroit neighborhoods to try to revitalize it and stuff. So she's going in for a job interview. She needs to stay there. There's another convention in town, and so she has to get an Airbnb. She arrives at the Airbnb. It's all storming, it's raining, it's night. She can't see the state of the neighborhood that she's in, but it's Detroit, and it's destroyed and abandoned, and there's no one around for miles, which already sets up a wonderful setting for a horror film. She gets to the Airbnb door, punches in the code to get the key. The key's not there. She's like pounding on the door. She's calling the agency that she signed up for the Airbnb from. Well, Airbnb. And no one's answering. Of course, it's the middle of the night. Why would they be there? And so she sort of goes back to her car in order to figure out what the hell she's going to do. Then a light turns on in the house. She goes over, knocks on the window, and that's where we meet Keith, who's Bill Skarsgård's character, this guy who is also at the Airbnb, rightfully so. They both double booked it. Different companies were booking the same room. And so they're sort of hands up in the air like, well, we both booked it, but he was here first. And she's coming into it thinking, well, there's a strange guy in this house. Is he going to murder me? Is he going to abuse or assault me? Like, how far can I go? And it does a wonderful job with the tension and unfortunate realities that a lot of women have to deal with in any given situation. You're alone. You don't have access to help. And there's a strange man there. It sucks that this is a reality for so many women in situations like this, that they have to be overly protective and, sort of deal with the situation completely different than a guy would deal with it. And they address that wonderfully in the film. It has so many wonderful, creepy situations. And Bill Skarsgård, I mean, he's amazing. I first saw him in Hemlock, which is this almost good Netflix series. And then he, of course, he was the clown in It. He does a wonderful job as a bad guy. So you're coming into this thinking, this is the bad guy. Not going to spoil anything, but the tension between them is palpable. And so he offers, look, you take the room, I'll take the couch. We both have our lives to go about. And then they start to get to know each other as they're waiting for the bed sheets to dry, because of course she doesn't want to sleep in the bed sheets that he was in, because ew. So they get to know each other over the time that they're waiting for that to dry, and they end up actually kind of really liking each other. And they have this wonderful moment. They share a bottle of wine, and they have very similar. She's going to, like I said, this job interview about musicians who came to Detroit. He's one of those musicians, they find out. And we don't know if he's delivering a line or not, but he knows everything about the jazz scene and about this music scene happening in Detroit. So she definitely believes him. And we as an audience are led to believe him as well, which is what you would expect. And that's when things start getting weird. This is where we're getting to spoiler territory. So if you don't want to be spoiled, and you should not be spoiled about this, I'm doing this because I don't want to have to do another spoiler review, which is why I get up to this point and I'm warning you. So let me give you my rating before I get into spoiler stuff. Straight up, this is a 5 Evil Eye film. This is beautiful. Again, it goes in directions you do not expect. You were never cued into. The idea of the film being called Barbarian is a misnomer, but it's still so good. And the music and the cinematography and the setting and the actors and the character development. It is an amazing film that you have to see. It feels like an indie horror film, and it really, truly, in its core is. It's great. You have to see this film. Do yourself a favor. All right, now I'm going to get into the real spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, get out of here. And you shouldn't, so get. Okay, now I should be talking to myself or someone who's already seen it. We realize that there's some other weird stuff happening in this house. We cut back to the 1970s, and we see this character played by Richard Brake, who is an amazing actor, who's on a bunch of, he's always like a bad guy, or, he's in a couple of Rob Zombie's films as a bad guy, but he plays this really great character role as this super creepy bad guy in this. And we only get a little bit of him in this, but basically his name is Frank. And we find out that he is keeping people in his basement, and he kidnaps women and he keeps them in his basement and he tortures them, and, all that sort of weird, creepy, disgusting stuff. And this is in this weird flashback scene, and he owned the house. And then we flash over to Justin Long's character, AJ Gilbride, who is this Hollywood screenwriter or something, or actor, who is just had his pilot picked up, and then he got Me Too'd. He ended up raping this girl, even though he didn't see it as rape, but she definitely did. And of course, as he describes it later, yeah, he fucking raped her. So he's already set up as a piece of shit Anyway, he needs to liquidate all of his assets because he gets fired from this gig for this obvious, horrible, horrible situation that he put himself in. And he's reaping the repercussions of it. And so he owned that house that this woman went to at the very beginning of the film and that Frank owned back in the 70s. And so he had it up on Airbnb. Now he needs to go measure the square footage and get it all ready to liquidate it. So he goes back into town. He sees that there's people's stuff there that he doesn't realize, and I'll get to that here in a second. And then he starts investigating the house. Again, this is all spoiler information. So if you're coming into this for a spoiler-free, you are going to be ruined. Just putting it out there. So Justin goes to inspecting it, and all of the weird, disgusting stuff that we experienced with Tess discovering all of these sort of underground passages and stuff. He's excited because it's extra square feet that he can then add to the sale value of the home, which is weird. And that's where he gets confronted with what is the bad guy of this show. Okay, so let's go back to Tess and Keith. Tess goes the next morning to her job interview. It went well. Her interviewee is telling her, well, where are you staying? And she's like, oh, I'm staying in this part of Detroit. She's like, you should not be there. That is a dangerous part of it. Like, seriously, you need to get out. And she's like, I don't have anywhere else to go. There's a convention in town. There's no hotels. And so, they set up their next meeting. She returns, and there's this black guy running toward her from down the street saying, don't go in the house. Don't go in the house. So immediately she's, of course, freaked out. There's a guy chasing her. So she finally gets in the house, locks the door behind her, and then takes the key with her as she's like looking for Keith, who is also still out. He hasn't come back yet because he was, searching for other places to sort of set up his music ventures in this neighborhood. So she realizes that there's another part to this house, a basement. So she goes down to the basement. She discovers a secret door, and this is in the trailer, so this isn't part of a spoiler. But what happens next is a huge spoiler. Again, spoiler. Don't listen if you haven't seen this film. So she finds this weird, gross sort of torture room with a camera set up and this really gross stained blood bed and a bucket full of shit and stuff in it. And then she's summarily freaked out, rightfully so. She immediately tries to go back upstairs, but the door closed and locked because it's sort of this auto hinge that closes, but for some reason it locks. We find out a little bit later. So she's trapped in what she sees as this murder room. And so, finally she hears banging on the door upstairs, and it's Keith returning. So she's like, at the glass of the basement, like, help, help, help. So anyway, she's freaked out. She tries to convey how fucked up this murder room is that she saw. And Keith just isn't getting it. He's not understanding it. So he goes down to check it out, and she refuses to go down there because she's freaked out. And then he disappears. So now she's in a position, do I leave him down there, or do I go find out what the hell happened to him? Is this all a setup? Is he really a bad guy, or is he not a bad guy? She has no idea. She goes to explore, finds another secret doorway that goes down into like carved out, like mined out tunnels. And there's this creature that ends up killing Keith and screaming. And that's when we cut back to the 1970s and we see the original owner, Frank. And so we know that there's this bad guy down there, this weird, creepy, naked woman who is like disgusting looking, like Hills Have Eyes type look. Cut back to AJ measuring for, to sell this home. And he gets attacked by this creature, like it's like chasing him. And so he runs away from it, falls into this pit. And that's where he finds Georgina Campbell, Tess, the character's name. So Tess is like, this thing just wants a baby. You need to act like it's baby if you want to survive. And he's like, get the fuck out of here. I need to get out of here. Help me out. He's freaking out. The creature comes up. It's called the Mother. It's played by, and we have to give props where props due. This is a spoiler, people. So if you're tuning in and you don't want to be spoiled, turn it off. Do not come here. I'm spoiling the movie right now. Matthew Patrick Davis plays the role of the mother, a bunch of prosthetics and stuff, but he plays this naked, sort of mutated woman, basically. So she's trying to, have a baby, and we get this huge backstory about it all. But anyway, she's like the monster of all of this. Anyway, so Tess escapes as this mother takes AJ and tries to breastfeed him and stuff because he wasn't taking the bottle that she was offering him earlier. So Tess escapes, And she's running around trying to find a cop. She finally, gets to a gas station. The cops don't believe her. She's been trapped for 2 weeks in that hole by this mother. And she looks like a crackhead. And so, she's all dirty and filthy and talking crazy talk. And so they don't believe her. They go to the house, and it looks like she was trying to break into the house, and because it's in this destructive neighborhood. So the cops don't believe her, and they leave. She's freaking out. She's like, how am I going to help this guy AJ down there? Meanwhile, AJ runs and further hides in this cavern when the mother goes to chase after Tessa's when she escapes. And so he finds Frank as an old man laying down in this bed, who ends up killing himself. He sees all these tapes that Frank did, all these horrible things that he did to all these women that he abducted and stuff. And so now he has a gun. Cut to Tess coming back down and looking for him to try to rescue him from the mother, and him coming out with a gun. He shoots her, and they end up trying to escape. They get out. Tess ends up crushing the mother with her car, ruining her car. They have to find somewhere where they can sort of escape her. That's where the homeless guy comes in. They go to find him and stay with him. The mother comes in and chases them all around. And we find out AJ is still a bad guy because he throws Tess off the roof, and the mother goes after her. He, then comes down to try to rescue her and save her. He's wrestling with all these thoughts about how he's a bad guy because he raped that woman, but did he just do a bad thing? And maybe he's not a bad guy, but then he threw Tess off the roof, so he's clearly a bad guy. He ends up getting killed by the mother, and then Tess ends up shooting the mother, and that's how she finally escapes. That's how the film ends. It's not a long film, but it does subvert every expectation that it sets you up to believe is the story. The barbarian in the film is this mother figure who is the result of Frank having tortured, raped, and impregnated, and then delivered and tortured and raped those children over many, many, many decades. It's a very Hills Have Eyes situation, but it's beautifully put together in this sort of wasteland of Detroit. This is a wonderful film. Again, I straight up spoiled it in this last half of this review, but I warned you, so it's kind of your fault if you are upset. Again, the review rating, 5 out of 5. This is exactly what you want from a theater going experience. There was a moment of tension where you're like, oh shit, screaming out in the middle of the theater. There's moments of laughter, nervous laughter to cut the tension. Not laughter because anything was overtly funny happening on the screen, but you believed it. The characters in this are so great. Tess as the final girl is wonderful as a character. Keith, you find out he's actually a really good fucking guy, and you love him. You want him to survive, and he doesn't. And AJ is a douchebag. You want him to be punished, and he gets punished, and you love that. Frank, you want him to be punished, but he sort of takes his own life, and so you don't actually get to see that. And all I could feel was sorrow for the creature. I immediately started feeling like I felt with reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You identify with the creature and the sorrow that the creature experiences, and really the desire of the creature just to have a human connection. And so it is sorrowful, and it is sad, and it makes you have conflicted feelings, and you don't want it to die, but you know it can't live in the real world. So it has to die. And it's just, you have these weird different feelings flooding you, and the terror is there and the jump scares are there, but not too much so that it's, shitty and cheesy like modern horror films are traditionally. It was just crafted so beautifully with the script. I can't wait to see what Zach Cregger does next as a writer-director. I want him to stay in this genre and explore this genre more, because what he pulled off here should not have been able to be pulled off, and I loved it. Again, the music was so good throughout the entire film. And again, it's not a long film, but it's a good one. So do yourself a favor, get your ass out to the theater and watch Barbarian. It is worth your time, and it is definitely worth your money. Anyway, that's all I had for this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in live if you're watching live, and after the fact if you're not. As always, whether you like it or not, evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.